Ambassador Velrus of the Sindari Collective had served in diplomatic positions for nearly 400 cycles. She had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. She had negotiated peace treaties between species that had warred for generations. She had seen things that would break lesser minds. Nothing in her long career had prepared her for what she would witness on the small blue world called Earth. The invitation had come 3 standard months ago. The humans, relatively new members of the Galactic Council, had extended an offer to several allied species. They wished to demonstrate their military capabilities as a show of good faith. The message had been warm and friendly, filled with the characteristic human enthusiasm that many species found either charming or exhausting. Velrus had assembled a delegation of 12 ambassadors representing 6 different species. There was High Counselor Morduk of the Krillix, a massive being covered in thick plates of natural armor. There was Observer Yini from the Delphax, a slender telepathic creature with enormous eyes that could perceive emotions like colors. The others were equally distinguished members of their respective governments. They had traveled aboard a luxury diplomatic vessel, discussing what they might expect to see. The humans had only been spacefaring for 2 centuries. Their technology, while impressive for such a young species, was still considered primitive by galactic standards. Most assumed the training exercises would be a simple demonstration of their basic weapons and defensive formations. The ship landed at a human military installation called Fort Bragg. The facility sprawled across thousands of acres of dense forest and rolling hills. Human soldiers in strange patterned clothing stood at attention as the delegation disembarked. A tall human female with short gray hair approached them with a wide smile. "Welcome to Earth," she said through the universal translator embedded in her collar. "I am General Patricia Morrison. We are honored to host the distinguished members of the Galactic Council. Please, follow me. We have prepared quite a show for you." The delegation followed her toward a series of elevated platforms overlooking a vast open field. Comfortable seating had been arranged for beings of various sizes and body types. Refreshments sat on nearby tables. Everything seemed pleasant and civilized. Velrus settled into her seat and folded her 4 hands in her lap. Beside her, Observer Yini's enormous eyes blinked slowly. The telepath's antenna twitched with mild curiosity, but nothing more. "We will begin with basic infantry maneuvers," General Morrison announced. "What you are about to witness is a standard training exercise for our Special Operations Forces." The first group of humans emerged from the tree line. They wore minimal protective gear and carried weapons that fired projectiles rather than energy beams. Velrus made a mental note about their primitive armaments. Several of her colleagues shifted with obvious boredom. Then the exercise began. The humans moved with a speed and coordination that caught Velrus off guard. They sprinted across terrain that would have been difficult to walk on. They threw themselves to the ground, rolled, and came up firing their weapons at targets that appeared without warning. The sound was deafening. Explosions erupted around them, showering dirt and debris through the air. High Counselor Morduk leaned forward with sudden interest. His armored plates clicked together as he shifted his bulk. "Those explosions," he said slowly. "They are quite close to the soldiers." General Morrison nodded calmly. "Yes, we believe in realistic training conditions. Our soldiers must be prepared for the chaos of actual combat." One of the humans stumbled and fell. Velrus expected the exercise to stop while the injured soldier received medical attention. Instead, 2 of his companions grabbed him under the arms and dragged him forward while continuing to fire their weapons. The fallen soldier drew a sidearm and joined in despite the obvious pain on his face. "He is injured," Velrus observed with growing concern. "Should the exercise not be suspended?" The general glanced at her with an expression the ambassador could not read. "He has suffered a twisted ankle. The exercise continues unless injuries are life-threatening. Our soldiers must learn to fight through pain." Observer Yini made a small distress sound. The telepath's antennae were now pressed flat against her skull. "I can feel them," she whispered. Their emotions. They are experiencing genuine fear and pain, yet they continue. How is this possible? The exercise concluded with the humans storming a fortified position. They moved through simulated enemy fire without hesitation. Several took hits from training rounds that left visible welts on their exposed skin. None of them stopped. None of them retreated. They pushed forward until every target had been neutralized. When they emerged from the structure, they were laughing. One soldier clapped another on the back hard enough to make a sharp cracking sound. They exchanged jokes that the translator could not adequately convey. These beings who had just subjected themselves to deliberate harm seemed genuinely happy. That was merely the first demonstration, General Morrison said. Shall we proceed to close combat training? The delegation exchanged uncertain glances. Valrus felt a strange sensation in her primary stomach. She would later recognize it as the beginning of dread. The close combat arena was a circular pit surrounded by high walls. Sand covered the floor. Stains marked the surface in patterns that Valrus did not want to examine too closely. Two human males entered the arena from opposite sides. They wore only basic clothing and protective wraps around their hands. This exercise demonstrates unarmed combat techniques, the general explained. The soldiers will engage until one submits or is rendered unable to continue. The two humans circled each other with predatory focus. Then they collided. Valrus had seen violence before. She had witnessed wars fought with plasma cannons and nuclear weapons. She had reviewed footage of battles that had left planets scarred for generations. None of it compared to the raw brutality of what unfolded in that sandy pit. The humans struck each other with their closed fists. They used their elbows, their knees, their heads. They grappled and threw each other to the ground with bone-jarring force. Blood flowed from cut faces. The sound of impacts echoed off the walls with sickening regularity. High Counselor Morduk rose from his seat. His armored body trembled visibly. "This is barbaric," he declared. "These are members of the same species, the same military force. Why do they harm each other so grievously?" General Morrison remained calm. "This training builds resilience and combat effectiveness. Our soldiers must be prepared to face opponents who will not show mercy. The only way to prepare for violence is to experience it." One of the humans executed a throw that slammed his opponent into the sand with tremendous force. The fallen soldier gasped for breath. Then he wrapped his legs around his attacker and twisted his entire body. The standing human crashed down and suddenly found himself trapped in a hold that threatened to break his arm. He did not surrender. He struggled against the hold while his face turned red with effort and pain. His free hand pounded against the sand. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he tapped his palm against his opponent 3 times. Both humans stood. They embraced each other warmly. Blood still dripped from their wounds as they exchanged words of congratulation and respect. "They are friends," Observer Yini said in a horrified whisper. "I can feel their genuine affection for each other. They just attempted to cause serious injury to someone they love." This makes no sense. The demonstrations continued throughout the day. The delegation watched humans practice with edged weapons. They observed obstacle courses designed to push bodies beyond reasonable limits. They saw soldiers subjected to simulated drowning, exposure to chemical irritants, and deliberate sleep deprivation. Each new horror surpassed the last. Each demonstration revealed another layer of the human capacity for inflicting and enduring suffering. The soldiers participated willingly. They volunteered for additional challenges. They competed to see who could endure the most punishment. By evening, the delegation had largely stopped speaking. They sat in shocked silence as General Morrison delivered her closing remarks. "Thank you for attending this demonstration," she said with evident pride. "What you have witnessed represents only the foundational training our soldiers receive. Advanced programs are considerably more demanding. We hope this has given you confidence in humanity's ability to defend our mutual interests." Valrus found her voice with difficulty. General, may I ask a question? Of course, Ambassador. Why? Why do your people subject themselves to such treatment? Your species is not naturally armored like the Krillix. You are not resistant to pain like the Vorthox. You are soft creatures with fragile bodies. Why do you train as if you were made of stone? General Morrison considered the question for a long moment. When she answered, her voice carried a weight that pressed against the air itself. Because we are not made of stone. We break easily. We bleed. We die. We know this about ourselves. So we learn to fight anyway. We learn to push through the breaking. We learn that the mind can command the body to continue long after the body wishes to stop. Pain is just information. Fear is just a signal. We choose what to do with that information. We choose how to respond to that signal. She paused and looked directly at Valrus with eyes that seemed suddenly ancient. Every human soldier knows they might die in combat. They train this way so that when death comes for them, they are ready. They will not freeze. They will not flee. They will fight until their last breath, not because they do not feel fear, but because they have mastered it. That is what makes us dangerous, Ambassador. Not our weapons, not our ships. Our willingness to suffer and keep going. Our ability to stare into the darkness and charge forward anyway. The journey back to the Council homeworlds took 3 weeks. During that time, the delegation barely spoke. They took their meals separately. They avoided eye contact when passing in the corridors. Observer Yini required sedation for the first week. The emotions she had absorbed during the demonstrations had left lasting marks on her psyche. The ship's medical officer described her condition as psychological contamination. High Counselor Mordek submitted his resignation from the Military Advisory Committee shortly after returning home. His official statement cited a desire to pursue other interests. Privately, he confessed to colleagues that he could no longer sleep without dreaming of that sandy arena. Valrus delivered her report to the Galactic Council in a closed session. The recording was immediately classified at the highest level. Several council members requested permanent leave after viewing the footage. The official recommendation was simple. Humanity should be treated with extreme caution. They should be kept as allies at all costs. Under no circumstances should any species provoke them into conflict. The council approved the recommendation unanimously. Several members added personal notes to the record, expressing their profound hope that they would never have to witness human combat capabilities directed at anything other than training targets. In the years that followed, humanity's reputation spread throughout the galaxy. Other species learned to speak of them in hushed tones. They were the soft creatures who had made themselves hard. They were the fragile beings who refused to break. They were the mortals who had looked upon their own weakness and forged it into strength. Ambassador Valrus retired from diplomatic service and never spoke publicly about her visit to Earth. When asked about humans, she would simply shake her head and change the subject. Only once, in a private conversation with a trusted friend, did she offer any insight into what she had witnessed. "They call it training," she said quietly. "They act as if it is normal. They do not understand that what they consider preparation for war would be considered torture by most civilized species. And the truly terrifying part? They enjoy it. They choose it. They celebrate those who endure the most. I have seen monsters in my time, old friend, but I have never seen monsters who love each other the way humans do. That is what keeps me awake at night. Not their violence, their love. Because that love allows them to do anything to protect their own. Anything at all." She fell silent after that. Her friend did not press for more details. Some knowledge, they both understood, was too heavy to carry alone. And some species were better left undisturbed in their strange and terrible ways.